We are up to the new Perek Chof Tes Amud Beis, the fourth Perek in the Masechtas Rosh Hashanah, Daf Chof Tes Amud Beis 29b2. And the Mishnah continues on the idea, as you know, these days, we do not blow the shofar on Shabbos, on Rosh Hashanah. That is not because biblically, in the Oraisa, it's perfectly okay. Biblically speaking, whoops, a second. Sorry about that. Biblically speaking, there is no problem. I'm trying to get rid of the glare here, but okay, I see it's not working. Okay, so biblically speaking, there is no problem with blowing the shofar on Shabbos. Blowing the shofar itself is not a problem, as the Gemara will explain, because shofar is not a malacha, it is a chachma. It is a wisdom of how to do it. Sounds itself are not. The sounds themselves are not mamoshistic, they're ethereal, they're not here. So therefore, there's no problem. Biblically speaking, we have the problem of Shema Yavirenu Dalet Amos B'Shus Rabin. That you might forget, and in order to, you don't know how to blow the shofar, in order to bring it to somebody that does, you would have this problem. Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Good morning, Yitzhak. How are you?
Okay, very good. We're holding 29b2.
Okay, sorry to be late.
That's okay, 29b2. And that's at the new Perek, the start of the new Perek. Okay, right there at the beginning. All right? So you got it up?
Got it.
Okay, so again, let me just repeat what I was just saying. We're talking about blowing the shofar on Shabbos. Today, in the world that we live in today, we do not blow the shofar at all on Shabbos. If Rosh Hashanah should fall out on Shabbos, we end up blowing shofar only one day, the non-Shabbos day. But on Shabbos, we don't blow shofar. It's not that biblically, Midi Oraisa, you can't blow shofar. You could blow shofar. On the contrary, because as the Gemara is going to explain, shofar is not a malacha, is not a job. It's a chachma. It is knowledge. It is a wisdom. Because sounds themselves are ethereal, are not here. So there's nothing you're doing. It is the ability to blow the shofar is not a work, is not a job. It is a chachma. In Yiddish, we call it a fach, a talent. Therefore, biblically, there's no problem. Rabbinically, they were worried, Shema Yavirenu Dalet Amos B'Shus Rabim. You might come to carry the shofar 4 Amos in the Rishus Rabim. Why? Because you don't know how to blow the shofar, and you're going to go find an expert that does know how to blow the shofar. So you might come to carry out in the public thoroughfare, and therefore by 4 Amos, and that obviously is a problematic. So the whole thing here is only rabbinical. However, as is always the case, how we came to the way that we hold, that we don't blow at all, is going to be worked out in this Gemara and Mishnah. Obviously, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, things were changed, because you have to remember in the Beis Hamikdash, lo ein shavus lemigdash. There are no rabbinical decrees. The Beis Hamikdash was outside the regular rabbinical system. Okay, and so therefore, if we were worried about carrying, we have a worry rabbinically that we might carry in the street 4 Amos, that's only a problem outside the Beis Hamikdash, but not in the Beis Hamikdash. With that introduction, let's begin in the new Perek. Here we go. And if you got any questions, as usual, stop and ask. Okay, Yontiv shel Rosh Hashanah shechali yos b'Shabbos. Rosh Hashanah that falls on the Shabbos. B'Mikdash, in the Beis Hamikdash, in the temple. Hayu taikin, we blew the shofar, like we just said, because biblically there's no problem. It's only a worry rabbinically, and ain't shavus lemigdash. There are no rabbinical decrees that impact the environs of the Beis Hamikdash. So we clearly blew the shofar when the Beis Hamikdash stood on the Shabbos. But avulai b'Medina, but not in the provinces. Okay, nowhere else in the country From this, it seems to be saying at this moment in the Mishnah, that includes Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. It seems to be saying that we do not blow the shofar on Shabbos, even in Yerushalayim, only in the Beis Hamikdash. Why am I underlining this? Because we're going to come up to what looks like a contradiction at the end of this Mishnah. Okay, here we go. Mishachara Beis Hamikdash, when the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai shayu toikim b'chol mokim sheyesh by bezdin. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted that they blew shofar wherever there is a court of 23. So call it a court of appeals, right? You have your regular 3-person court, you have your court of 23, and you have your big court, the Sanhedrin of 71. So anywhere you have a court of 23, a mid-level, in other words, any court that was allowed to adjudicate capital cases was strong enough to go ahead and be allowed to blow shofar after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. You were allowed to blow shofar in those bezdins, okay? And that's the simple explanation the Gemara is going to go into. Does that mean only in those bezdins, only in those courts? Or no, in the locale of those courts, or only when those courts are opened and sitting, right? What is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? What was his whole? What did he establish? What did he institute here? It's a little up in the air, those words, b'chol makom sheyesh by bezdin, which means that after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we started getting more lenient, not more strict. We start allowing more places to blow outside. Amar Rabbi Elazar, says Rabbi Elazar, lo hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. No, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted this ela b'Yavna bilvad, only in Yavna itself. What is the story with Yavna? Well, when Vespasian was surrounding the city and about to destroy the city, Rabbi Yochanan snuck himself out of the city in a burial, in a coffin. And then he popped out and he went to Vespasian. When Vespasian saw him, he bowed down to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And he explained that before he goes into battle, he always sees this rabbi's face. Somehow he saw a face of a holy man, and the face that he's been seeing all this time has been this man, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who understood fully that Yerushalayim was going to be destroyed and the Beis Hamikdash was going to be destroyed, and he was worried about Judaism disappearing forever, he asked if can he please take 5 students and bring them to a small little town called Yavna. Can he go and open up a small little shul in a little corner in Yavna? And Vespasian said, okay, 5 students and a little yeshiva, I'll let you that. And from that one little action, today we have all the Judaism that we have today, and the Roman Empire is dead. Because Vespasian allowed Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai to go and open a small little yeshiva with 5 talmidim, 5 students. And from that group, spread out the knowledge and everything else that we have, and all of it, the lifeblood of our people, the Torah HaKadosh, the Holy Torah, spread from there to this day. So we are all, as it were, products of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It could be said that if it wasn't for Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, whose genius understood that if he just says, I just want to open up an old man, I want to just open up a little school for 5 of my students, and that's it, and make nothing of it, he got it past the Romans. And the Romans planted the seeds of their own destruction. Rabbi Yochanan planted the seeds of the eternal people to remain eternal. And Western civilization became the Western civilization because of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So it could be argued that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is perhaps the most important person to have ever lived from the time of the destruction onwards. And because of him, he laid the groundwork for everything that we are today, that everything that the Western world is today, and the destruction of the Roman Empire. And almost nobody knows who he is. Which is another lesson, great lesson in life. But anyways, here we go. That's the story of Yavne. That's how they ended up in Yavne. So Rabbi Elazar says, therefore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai only made the institution of blowing on the Shabbos only in his environs in Yavne. He trusted that his court would make sure that nobody carried in order to their shofar to the court, so therefore it could be blown on Shabbos. They said to him, to Echad Yavne, the Echad Kol Mokim Sheyesh by Bezdin. Both in Yavne and any other place where there is a court of 23, that's where Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted. You'll notice, in a place where there is a Bezdin, a place where there is a court, that means from over here, if you read the words carefully, that means you don't actually have to be in the court. It just has to be in a place where the court has authority. And that authority will make sure that people don't carry on the Shabbos, but allow them to blow on the Shabbos. Obviously, I'm presaging the Gemara over here. Va'oid, Zois hoisi Yerushalayim Yisera Yavne. And in additional respect, Yerushalayim was superior to Yavne. Shekol Yeshu Roya, any town that could see Jerusalem, the Shaimas, and could hear the shofar coming out of Jerusalem, Ukaraiva, and was near to Yerushalayim, Vikula Lavai, and could come to Yerushalayim. The Gemara is going to explain all of these. Toikin would be allowed to blow shofar on the Shabbos. Ubi Yavna, but in Yavna, loyhayu toikin elo the Beis Din bilvad. In Yavna, they were only able to blow in Bezdin itself. So here we now have something else. That in Yavna, in fact, they only blew in Bezdin, not in the environs of Bezdin. Different than what was said before. But more importantly, we said when Yontif, when the Beis Hamikdash was standing, they only blew in the Beis Hamikdash, but not in the provinces. And now, what do we just say over here? That the greatness of Yerushalayim was that when they heard the call of the shofar from the Beis Hamikdash, anywhere that they could hear the call and they were in walking distance and they could see, everybody could blow, which means that in Yerushalayim and its suburbs, they did blow the shofar on Shabbos. So we've got a contradiction going on in our Mishnah. Inquiring minds want to know what's the difference between the beginning of the Mishnah and the ending of the Mishnah. And of course, that's why we have the Gemara, which also teaches us why did Rebbe HaKadosh, Rebbe the Prince, write the Mishnah like this? Because he wanted the Mishnah to be a living, breathing organism. Ask questions, argue in it, bring it to life, which is the same reason why the Torah HaKadosh, the Holy Torah, when it brings down the mitzvahs, always brings them in broad strokes. So like, honor your father and your mother. What's honor? Fear your mother and your father. What's fear? So now we begin to argue. Have children. How many children? Put on it should be a sign between your eyes. That's tefillin. What are tefillin? What do they look like? What's the parshas? Remember the day of the Sabbath. How do I remember it? What do I have to do to remember it? Guard the day of the Sabbath. How do I guard it? So everything was done in a way that clearly had an oral component to it, filling in the details of the law. And in doing so, allowed it to breathe and be alive today as much as it was alive 3,500 years ago when it was given. And Baharaya, we're sitting here and learning today, this morning, right? Working our way through all of this understanding of something that applies to us, because we blow the shofar. Do we blow it Shabbos? Do we not blow it Shabbos? Why not? Right? What's the situation? So here we go. Says the Gemara. Minohani mili. First of all, how do I know that you do not blow the shofar on Shabbos? Midi Araisa, there should be no problem. Biblically speaking, you should be allowed to blow the shofar. Says Amar Rabbi Levi Balachma, Amar Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina, Kol Sevechad Oima. One pasuk says Shabbosain Zichrain Turua, a rest day, a remembrance of the Trua sound, which makes it sound that what? On the Shabbos you rest and you merely remember the blowing of the shofar, so that you do not blow shofar on the Shabbos. Because of Echad Oimer, and one of them, and we have another pasuk that says Yom Teruah Yelachem. It is a day of Teruah soundings. It shall be for you, which the first day implies it needs to be remembered. The second one is that it must be blown. Like Kasha, Kan be Yom Tov Shechali Yos B'Shabbos. The first pasuk is talking about when the Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. Kan be Yom Tov Shechali Yos B'Chol. The second pasuk is talking when the Yom Tov falls out on the weekday. Where it falls out on the weekday, it's Yom Teruah Yelachem. A day of Teruah, it shall be for you, you need to blow. When it says Shabbosain Zichrain Teruah, it's Shabbos. And on Shabbos, you don't only remember the blowing, you don't actually do the blowing. If that's true, what I just said, now we're on 29b3, Amar Rava says, wait a minute. You're bringing me psukim, verses. In that case, it's a biblical law that Shabbosain, Zichron Teruah, it's a rest day. It should be a remembrance of the blowing. Is biblical in nature. So therefore, if it's a biblical meaning that you're not allowed to blow it on Shabbos, then in that case, the Mikdash, in the Beis Hamikdash, how did they blow the shofar on Shabbos? And everybody knows that in the Beis Hamikdash, they definitely blew the shofar on Shabbos. But if it's a biblical prohibition, then there is no mitzvah blowing the shofar. If there's no mitzvah blowing the shofar, what in the world were they blowing the shofar in the Beis Hamikdash? Number two, halad malachi. The act of blowing the shofar is in fact not a labor. The itzur krolamiute, that you would require a pasuk to exclude it from doing it on Shabbos. The Tana de Beis Shmuel, because we learned in the yeshiva of Shmuel, kol meleches avodah lo sasu, you shall do no laborious work. Yotza tekiah shofar, excluded from the prohibition of working on the Shabbos is the blowing of shofar. Veridas hapeh, the removal of bread from an oven. In those days, they would plaster the bread on the side of the ovens. And you had to be careful how to peel it off the wall so you didn't break the bread, that it remained a whole piece. Why? Shehi chachma ve'ena malacha, because it's a skill, it's a fach, and not a creative labor. So therefore, it's not even a labor that it should be prohibited on the Shabbos. So what's going on here? Ela Amarava, like I explained in the introduction, Midia Raisa Mishrashari. Biblically speaking, of course you can blow the shofar Shabbos. Of course you can blow the shofar Shabbos. That's not a problem. The Rabbanan who the Geizabah, and the Rabbanan who decreed against it. Kid Rabba, like Rabba. The Amar Rabba Hakol Chayovim B'Tekiyah Shofar. Everyone is obligated in blowing the shofar. But not everybody knows how to blow the shofar. Therefore, therefore the rabbis came and made a decree that said, don't blow on Shabbos because you might take the shofar in your hand to go find an expert who does know how to blow it or to teach you how to blow it. And you'll inadvertently carry it 4 amas from the public domain into you'll carry it 4 amas in the public domain in violation of the Issa D'Oraisa of carrying 4 Amas in the Rishus Harabim in the public domain. V'hainu Tama de Lulav, and that's the reason why we do not take the Lulav on the Shabbos. V'hainu Tama de Megillah, and that's the reason why we don't read the Megillah if Purim would fall out on Shabbos, which it doesn't. But if it could fall out on Shabbos, we would have that problem. We wouldn't lay in the Megillah. Now, number one, there's just a few things here to discuss. The Gezerah is only that you might carry 4 Amas in the Rishus Harabim in the public thoroughfare. We're not afraid that you might carry from your private domain into the public domain. Why not? The answer is a private domain to a public domain has a clear demarcation. Your door, you know, in your house, you're in a private domain. You step out of your house, you're in the public domain. So your doorway acts almost like a Eruv to remind you, oops, I'm not allowed to carry out. The problem here is if the shayfa is sitting in your yard and you just pick it up and you carry it, we're more worried about you carrying it 4 Amas in the Rishus Harabim as opposed to taking it from your private property into the public thoroughfare. Tosfos explains this. Okay, the other thing is, here's the very interesting thing. We know we have a rule. Asay, doicher, loisasay. A positive commandment pushes off a negative commandment. Here I have a positive commandment to blow the shofar. I have a negative commandment not to carry on the Shabbos. According to that established rule, the asay is doicha loisasay. The positive commandment of blowing the shofar should push away the negative prohibition of carrying on the Shabbos. So why can't I blow on the Shabbos? Good question. So one answer could be simply that the mitzvah is blowing the shofar. Carrying the shofar to a person who knows how to blow it is only a preparation for the mitzvah, a hechsha mitzvah. Who said that on a hechsha mitzvah, on a preparation of the mitzvah, I say the positive commandment overrides the negative commandment? That's one. Number two, we already learned. We're dealing with Rosh Hashanah. We know that there was the first day of Rosh Hashanah is always uncertain. Is it really the last day of the previous month or the first day of Tishrei, right? We've been talking about it for the last 2 weeks, right? Are the witnesses going to show up during the day? Will Bezdin have enough time to interrogate the witnesses before nightfall, before Har Shemesh? So the first day of Rosh Hashanah is always uncertain, right? There's an uncertainty. Is it really the 30th day? Is it the 30th day of Elul? Or is it the first day of Tishrei? If it's the 30th day of Elul, there's no mitzvah to blow shofar. If it's the first day of Tishrei, there is a mitzvah to blow shofar. Since it's an uncertainty, on an uncertainty, I definitely don't say, I say, say. A positive commandment overrides a definite prohibition. It's Shabbos today. I'm definitely prohibited from carrying out. Now, if it's Rosh Hashanah, I have a positive commandment to blow the shofar. But if it's not Rosh Hashanah, it's really the last day of Elul, the 30th day of Elul, well then, I have no mitzvah to blow the shofar. So I've got an uncertain positive commandment to blow the shofar versus a certainty that it is Shabbos with its prohibition of carrying in the public domain. An uncertainty does not take us out from a definite position. All right? Hopefully this makes a lot of sense. That's just a little lumdus, a little thing. The underlying, in the words of the Gemara, all of this is underlining these words over here. Because otherwise, in truth, they don't make any sense. Okay, welcome to the pilpul, as they say, of Gemara. okay, which we don't usually do in Daf Yomi because if we did, we wouldn't get moving like now. So now so let's pick up a little speed, otherwise we'll be here till 10 o'clock. So here we go. Not that I got a problem with that, but I think some of the other people might. So here we go. The Mishnah said further, we're on 29b3 right column. Okay, heading to the Gemara in the wide lines in the Gemara, the first wide line in the Gemara. Okay, Mishechora Beis Hamikdash Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. After the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted that they could blow shofar on Shabbos wherever there is a bezdin. Mashma, wherever there is a bezdin, but not lav davka in bezdin itself, but it could be anywhere within the environs under the authority of the bezdin, under the authority of that court. So now, here we go. Tanu Rabbana, we have a brayso. Pamachas chal Rosh Hashanah liyos b'Shabbos. How did this come into being? How did this institution come into being that you were allowed to be? So after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, Pamachas chal Rosh Hashanah liyos b'Shabbos. It once occurred that Rosh Hashanah fell on the Shabbos after the Sanhedrin, the main court, the Supreme Court, was exiled to Yavne. V'hayu kol ha'orim Wisconsin, and all the surrounding little towns gathered in Yavne to hear the blowing of the shofar on the Shabbos. Amar lahen Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai lebnei Beseira. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to the sons of Beseira, who were the leading sages of the generation after Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Niska, let's go blow the shofar on Shabbos. Amrullah, so the Ben Beseira said to him, Nodun, let us first consider if it's proper to do so. 29b4. Maybe we shouldn't be blowing on Shabbos. The Beis Hamikdash is no longer in stand. Even if we're talking about a time when the Beis Hamikdash wasn't still in existence, the Sanhedrin was no longer in Jerusalem. Amar lahen, Rabbi Yochanan said to them, Niska, let's blow. And afterwards we'll consider whether we should do it in the future or not. But right now we've got hundreds of people, thousands of people who have gathered in Yavne to hear the shofar. We've got to do it. After they blew the shofar on Shabbos, Amrullah, the sons of Beseira, said to Rabbi Yochanan, Nidon, okay, now let's consider whether we should do this in the future, or do we put a stop to this now? Amalahen, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to him, Kavar Nishmon Keren B'Yavne. Now you know where the name comes, Keren B'Yavne. We've already heard the horn in Yavne, and that's why it's called Yeshivas Keren B'Yavne. That's why it's called the famous saying, we've heard the horn sounding in Yavne. And after the deed has been done, we shouldn't refute what was already done. And that way, Rabbi Yochanan instituted that they blew the shofar in Yavne after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. See, he succeeded in instituting the practice of shofar blowing on the Shabbos in the Beis in Bezdin after the destruction. So from here, it's mashma that they blew not just in the environs of the Bezdin of Yavne, but they blew within the court itself of Yavne. Let's keep going. The Mishnah keeps going. In fact, Rabbi Yochanan only instituted blowing the shofar on Shabbos only in Yavne. They told him, in Yavne and any place where there is a bezdin of 23. If that's the case, what's the difference between him and the Tanakama, between the Acherim and the Tanakama, and the first explanation of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? Says the Gemara, Ikabinayu Beidina Ikri, regarding a transient bezdin, according to the Tanakama, right? The Tanakama said wherever there is a bezdin, that means it could be blown even when it's a transient bezdin. It's here today, gone tomorrow, right? The bezdin came to settle a machlokes, a dispute, and was there for Rosh Hashanah. What it called, the ones according to Rabbi Elazar, only both biyavna in any place where there is a bezdin, meaning it must be an established Bezdin. It has to be the Bezdin, the ORB of its place, essentially. Okay, so that's a big argument, whether it's just a Bezdin or it has to be the Bezdin. That's the difference, how far it went. Says the Gemara further, said the Mishnah, whether in Yaveh or any place where there is a court. Amar Rav Huna, and now we're on today's daf, 30A1. What does that mean? Im Bezdin. It's done with Bezdin. What does that mean? My Im Bezdin. What does it mean with Bezdin? Again, Bezdin is Beis Din, the house of the law. LAW, the house of the law. In other words, the court. Mipnei Bezdin. It means in the presence of Bezdin. La Fuki Shaloi Mipnei Bezdin Deloy. It means excluding, not being in the presence of Bezdin, which means outside. That means even though you're within the environs, under the authority of that Bezdin, nonetheless, if you're not in the Bezdin itself, you cannot blow the shofar on Shabbos. That's what Rav Huna said. Masiv Rava came and challenged him from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, V'oid, our Mishnah ends like this. Zoi Yerushalayim Yisrael al Yavna. In this way, Yerushalayim was greater than Yavna. My V'oid Zois, what does that mean in this additional respect? If you want to say like the Mishnah taught, that in Yerushalayim, the blowing was allowed even in the suburbs, but in Yavna it was not, Zois Miboyle. Then in that case, the Mishnah should have simply wrote, in this respect, Yerushalayim is superior. By writing the word Va'oid Zois, additionally, it means that there's more than one aspect in which Jerusalem is superior. Elov de Yerushalayim Toikin Yechidi. It might mean that in Yerushalayim, even private individuals were allowed to blow the shofar on Shabbos. Ubi Yavna ain't Toikin Yechidi. In Yavna, private individuals were not allowed to blow. Only somebody from the Bezdin was allowed to blow. Ubi Yavna ain't Toikin Yechidi. But is it true? Is that true that in Yavna, private individuals were not allowed to blow the shofar? Only the emissary of the Bezdin was allowed to blow. When Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef came to Bavel, he said, Ki Mesayim Shalicha Ditzibura Tekiya B'Yavna, when the Shliach Tzibur, which is of course the communal emissary, the Baal Tekei appointed by the court, finished blowing the shofar on the Shabbos in Yavna, a person cannot hear any sounds in his ear because of the noise of the shofar blast that all the private people were doing. So what do you see? That you were allowed to blow. A private individual was allowed to blow. If Bezdin in that city was allowed to blow, they were allowed to blow on the Shabbos. Elalav, to be Yerushalayim, Toikim, Ben Bizman, Beis Bezdin, Ben Shaloi Bizman Bezdin. In Yerushalayim, they were both able to do during the time of the Bezdin being open and outside of the time of the Bezdin being open. Okay, because Bezdin usually convened from the morning until Chatzos, until midday. And the answer was they were allowed to blow the shofar even after midday in Yerushalayim, when Bezdin's doors were closed. Ubi Yavna Bizman Shebezdin in Shalai Bizman Bezdin Loi, only at the time when the Bezdin was in session until midday they could blow, but outside of that in the afternoon they could not blow. So it says, wait a minute, Habizman Bezdin Hayutaikin, but during the time that Bezdin was in session, they can blow the shofar in Yavna, anywhere in Yavna, afilu shalai b'pnei Bezdin, even outside the presence of Bezdin. This contradicts what we just said before, that the blowing was only allowed in the presence of Bezdin. That's what Rav Huna said, la afuki shalai b'pnei Bezdin deloi, coming to exclude outside of Bezdin where you're not allowed to blow on Shabbos. It says, what a lie. It's not a question. No, it's not a good. Even if you were Yerushalayim, you were only allowed to blow the shofar while Bezdin was in session. But this is what our Mishnah means to say. The ilu b'Yerushalayim toikin bein bifnei bezdin bein shaloi bifnei bezdin. In Yerushalayim, as long as the bezdin was in session, both in the presence of the bezdin and outside the presence of the bezdin, you were allowed to blow shofar. Ubiyavna bifnei bezdin in shaloi bifnei bezdin. Not blow the shofar, right? So in other words, it's not pshat that when everybody came and blew the shofar so that Rabbi Yitzchak, Bar Yosef couldn't hear his own ears, it doesn't mean that they were blowing it in their homes. It means that after Bezdin blew the shofar in the court, the people would take out their shofars and blow their shofars there in the court as well as private people, so that they could be mekayim the mitzvah, their personal mitzvah of blowing the shofar and not rely on a messenger. There are those who taught the statement of Rav Huna like this: Diksiv, that in fact we're talking about Yovel, the Jubilee year, the rule about blowing the shofar in the Jubilee year, and we're not talking Lav Dafka, we're talking about on Rosh Hashanah, because the pasuk says Diksiv. On Yom Kippur, you should sound the shofar throughout your land. Malamed, we learn from this, that everybody, every individual was obligated to blow from a shofar on Yom Kippur on the Yovel year. To announce Yovel is here, everybody goes free. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna said this, that we say that everybody is obligated to blow their own shofar, the in Bezdin, it has to be done with Bezdin. My in Bezdin. What does it mean with Bezdin? Bisman Bezdin, during the time when Bezdin's in session. La Fuki Shalai Bisman Bezdin Deloi. But I mean blowing outside, you can't do it by yourself when Bezdin is not in session. 38.2. Masiv Rava. Tekiyas Rosh Hashanah b'Yovel, the shofar blowing of Rosh Hashanah and Yovel, doiche es haShabbos b'Gevulim. Well, we got a brayso that says overrides the Shabbos in the provinces. What does that seem to be saying? That means it may be blown outside the Beis Hamikdash on the Shabbos, both on Rosh Hashanah and on Yovel. Okay, what is we talking about over here? It says ish ubeisai. Each man in his house. My issue beisai. What does it mean, each man in his house? If it means that each man and each woman, his wife, are each individually obligated to blow the shofar, that can't be. It is mi mechayba. Are women mechuyev in the blowing of shofar? The blowing the shofar is a positive commandment that is caused by time. It's time bound. And all mitzvah says that what do you call it? All positive commandments that are bound by time, women are potter, because we said women are potter because usually that means that it's time to the holidays. Who prepares the house for the holidays? The women do, right? So we understand that that's what they do. The reason why women are not mechuyev to put on tefillin or talis is the same thing. Who gets the kids onto the bus? The answer is we don't. They do. The Torah understood it. Who's the Akeres Abayis? Who's running the house? Running the house is the wife, right? That's her responsibility. We're not going to give her extra responsibilities to drive her crazy, that she also has to run out in the morning and daven shachris and do the daf yomi and give the kids dress the kids, give the kids breakfast, pile them into the car, drive them to yeshiva, right? They said, enough. Our women aren't, as they say in Yiddish, banged out Hashanah leaves. That's not what they are. So that's why mitzvah says man grom and noshe beturas. So elalav, what does it mean? Ishu beisai, ish bibeisai. It means a man can blow shofar in his house. even not in the time of Bezdin. Says the Olam Bizman Bezdin. It's talking about when the Bezdin is in session. Masiv Rav Sheshes, so they still ask on Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes is asking on Rav Huna, Shava Yoibel Rosh Hashanah L'Tequila Brachas. We learned before that the Jubilee year is equal to the Rosh Hashanah with regard to its Shofar and the davening, meaning Malchiyus and Shofars, that we say the prayers of kingship and of Shofar, like we do on Rosh Hashanah. That on Yom Kippur of the Yovel, they blew the Shofar both in a Bezdin, in a court, which sanctifies the month, and in a Bezdin which does not sanctify the month. Which Bezdin that gets the authority to sanctify the month? Only the one in Jerusalem, i.e. the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court. Only the Supreme Court in the first place has the right to be sanctified the month. And in addition, the Chol Yochid V'Yochid Chayav L'Tkoya. Each and every individual is chayav to blow. Ubi Rosh Hashanah when it falls on Rosh Shabbos, but Rosh Hashanah when it falls on the Shabbos, they only blew the shofar in the bezin which sanctified the month, i.e. the Sanhedrin, which was located in the room in the Beis HaMikdash. And each and every individual did not blow the shofar on Shabbos. What does it mean that if Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbos, each individual is not mechuyev to blow to blow, is not obligated to blow? Says the Gemara. If you say that it means that on Yom Kippur of the Yovel, private individuals can blow the shofar. Ubi Rosh Hashanah ain't taking yichidi, but at Rosh Hashanah, which falls on Shabbos, individuals do not blow it at all. Only the Shliach Bezdin, only the emissary of Bezdin blows, the Shliach Tzibor, the communal emissary. So that can't be. The Chaki also Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef. I remember Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef came to Babel. He said, when the communal emissary finished blowing shofar in Yavda on Shabbos, a person couldn't hear himself from all the shofar blasts that were happening from individuals in Yavna on Shabbos. Therefore, what does this brisa mean? Whereas on Yom Kippur in the Yovel year, private people can blow the shofar. Whether Bezdin was in session, when Bezdin was not in session. The Rosh Hashanah that falls on Shabbos, Bizman Bezdin in. When the court is open, in session, private people can blow the shofar. Shalai Bizman Bezdin loy, but when it's not in session, they cannot blow. Ketani miyas, but from this basis, we at least learn the Yovel on Yovel, Bein Bizman Bezdin, Ben Shalai Bizman Bezdin, where the Bezdin is in session. When Bezdin is not in session, you're allowed to blow the shofar, which is completely against Rav Huna. Says the Gemara, loy, no. The Olam Bizman Bezdin. Of course, even on Yovel, the shofar blowing is only when Bezdin is in session. But if that's the case, what are we talking about here based on all the questions we just asked? And this is what the Bryce is meaning to teach. The Yovel, on Yovel, the Yom Kippur of a Yovel year, Bizman Bezdin Taikin, during the time of the session of Bezdin, even private individuals were allowed to blow the shofar, Bein B'fnei Bezdin, Bein Shalai B'fnei Bezdin, whether in the presence of Bezdin or outside the presence of Bezdin. You didn't have to be inside the court to blow. But when the session was finished, right? When the session was finished, there's no blowing, period. But Rosh Hashanah, when it falls on Shabbos, Taikim Bizman Bezdin, private individuals were allowed to blow the shofar during this, when the Bezdin was open for business, Ubivnei Bezdin, and only in the presence of Bezdin. That means they had to be in the court itself while the session was still going, that they individually could blow the shofar. Itmanami, and that's what we learned. Amar Reb Chia bar Gamdo, Amar Rab Yosef ben Shol, Amar Rebbe, Ein Toikin Ela Bizman Shebeis Bezdin Yoshvin. We do not blow the shofar on the Shabbos except when the Bezdin are seated not open, not yoshvin. What does that mean, yoshvin? The yoshvin v'doirish. They're sitting and in session. Bayer Rav Zera, so now, Rav Zera says, regarding sitting in session, na'agru lamoid, what happens if now they bestir themselves and prepare to stand up? It's already the end of davening and they're beginning to get fidgety. V'loy amdu, but they didn't actually stand up. Ma'ahu, what's the din regarding an individual's right to blow the shofar on the Shabbos? Bezdin yoishvin be'inon. We need bezdin that is seated in order for the private blowing to be loud. Va'ika, and they are. They're still seated. They're still present. We need it during the actual time of the session. That means during the time of the session, not that they're simply there. The and that's no longer here because now they're already getting up. That means they finish adjudicating. Said the Gemara, Teiko, Tishbi Yitaretz, Kushi B'Yabayis. Tishbi, that would be Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Tishbi. Eliyahu from Tishbi, when he comes, will come and answer our questions. Good. Further, and also there was an additional way that Yerushalayim was superior, that any town that could see Yerushalayim, could hear it, was near, and could come to Yerushalayim, was able to blow the shofar on Shabbos. What does it mean? Roya could see Yerushalayim, Pratli Yeshevis Benachal, to exclude a town that rests in a valley. Shaimas, because even though you could hear it, they couldn't see Yerushalayim. It's not enough that you were close enough to hear the shofar blowing in Yerushalayim. You had to see Yerushalayim. Shaimas could hear Pratli Yeshev B'Harahar, to exclude a town that rests on top of a mountain, right? And they have a splendid view of Yerushalayim. It was too far away to hear the sounds of Yerushalayim. No good. Excluding a town that rests beyond the 2,000 Abba boundary of Yerushalayim. The Kula Lava, and that could come, Prat Lamasikle Nahara. Exclude a town that is separated from Yerushalayim by a river, even though it's close by, and it can see Yerushalayim, and it can hear the shofars, but it can't get there because there was a flash flood. No good. You can't blow the shofar on Shabbos. Very good. We got 15 minutes, so we're going to keep on going here a little bit, at least to the next Mishnah. Let's keep going. Here we go. Here we go. Says the next Mishnah. Okay? Biri Shaina, since we're talking about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's Gezerah about the shofar blowing it on Shabbos in the Bezdin in Yavna, Biri Shaina, Hayululav Nito b'Migdash Shiva. When the Beis HaMikdash stood, they took in the Beis HaMikdash, they took the lulav for 7 days in the Beis HaMikdash. And that included Shabbos. Medina Yom Echad. And in the provinces, they only took it on the first day. Because the mitzvah d'oraisa, the biblical command, is only the first day to take the lulav esrei hadas v'arova. Mishachare Beis HaMikdash, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai lulav nito b'Medina shivazech l'mikdash. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted that the lulav should be taken in the provinces on all 7 days of Sukkot in remembrance of what took place in the Beis HaMikdash. And he also said, She'yoim henef kula maser, and the entire day of waving should be usher from eating the chadash, the new grains. What's this about? This is about this. As you remember, on the second day of Pesach, the 16th of Nisan, they brought the Omer, the carbon Omer. If you remember, the carbon Omer was brought with the new grains. Once the carbon Omer was brought, we now were allowed to use the new grains. The trigger that allowed us to start using and baking and doing everything with the new grains was the Omer that was brought on the 16th. Now, the Omer can be brought on the 16th, right? From after the carbon Tamid Shalbaike, when the Tamid of the morning was brought, the first carbon, it can be brought any along that time until the Tamid shall ben Abayim, until the afternoon Tamid was brought, which closed the service of that day. So just because daybreak broke didn't mean that you were allowed to eat from the new grains. You had to wait, what? Until the Omer was brought, and then in the Beis Hamikdash, and then everybody was allowed to eat from the new grains. So came along Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and said, after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, theoretically, if you used your thumb, you would say, well, once daybreak happens, and if the Beis Hamikdash was existence, they would have brought the carbon tamid, the morning tamid, and right after that they could have brought the omer. As soon as daybreak comes, we should be allowed now to what? To eat from the new grains. Yochanan said, no, I'm making it that the whole 16th day, your whole day, you cannot eat from the new grains. You have to wait until the nighttime of the 17th. You have to wait for the whole 16th day to go through. That was his thing after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. So the Gemara first of all talks about Minolon de Avidan Zeichel Hamikdash. Today we take this for granted that we do everything Zeichel Hamikdash in remembrance of the temple. But how do we know this? Who told us this is part of anything? Says the Gemara the Amakra, because we actually have a pasuk in Jeremiah, in Yirmiyah. Ki e'ala aruka lach, for I will make a cure for you. Umima kaiseich, and your wounds arefecha numa Hashem. Your wounds I will heal you, the word of Hashem. Ki nidacha karilach, for the nations of the world will call you the discarded one. Siyain, they will say, he daresh Engla. She is Zion and nobody is seeking for her. Mechlal the boy derisha. From here you learn that you need searching. That part of Yiddishit, and we all know that. We say this all the same. Dirshu Hashem v'hi motzei. Seek Hashem and you will find him. Our job is to seek. Our job is to seek. That's our job. Okay? What do you call it? And that is because, if you ever remember, when Adam Arishan, when the first man ate from the forbidden fruit, and he hid from God in the Garden of Eden, Hashem comes and he says the famous words, Ayeka, where are you? And we learn an important lesson from there. When a person does an Aveira, a person sins, who moves away from who? Does God move away from the man, or does the man move away from God? When Adam Arishan did the sin, God came and said, Ayeka, where are you? I'm here, said Hashem. I'm always here. I never moved from you. I'm your father. I never moved from you. You are moving from me. Ayeka, where are you? So the rule is, Dirshu Hashem, seek Hashem, and you'll find him, because he's always waiting there for you to return. Until the day of death, he points to him. Yoshev, if you return, miyad tekablo, immediately you're accepted, because Hashem is, the door is always open. Nothing stands in the way of tshuva. So that's what Rabbi did. That's where we came over here, because the goyim say, Tzion hu dairish ein loy. She is Zion, nobody is seeking her. Mechlal the boya derisha means that she requires seeking. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai determined one of the ways to commemorate Tzion and to seek her is to do the mitzvah of lulav in the way we do it in the Beis Hamikdash all 7 days, except of course on Shabbos. But the entire 16th day of Nisan should be forbidden to eat the new grains after the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. The Gemara says, why the whole day? My Tama. Why? Because mehera yibane beis hamikdash, speedily the beis hamikdash will be rebuilt. Va'imru, and therefore people will say, Ishtake mi lo yachanu b'ayim mizrach. Last year, on the 16th of Nisan, before the Beis Hamikdash was rebuilt, didn't we eat from the new grains as soon as daybreak was upon us? As soon as the day broke and the sunrise, the rays rose in the east, we were immediately allowed to eat from the new grains. This year, too, on the 16th in the morning, let's eat from the new grains when the sun comes up. They won't understand that last year when the Beis Hamikdash wasn't standing, there was no Omer offering, which meant that once the 16th day arrived, right, you were allowed to eat the new grains. But now that there is an Omer, because the Beis Hamikdash is standing, now it's not the daybreak that's matir that allows you to eat. Bringing of the Omer that permits grains. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted that in the absence of the Beis Hamikdash, the new grain should not be eaten the entire 16th day. In this way, if the Beis Hamikdash when the Beis Hamikdash gets rebuilt this year, they won't make a mistake by comparing it to the previous year. Great. A very positive way of looking at the world. 38.3. The Gemara says, wait a minute. When was Rabbi Yochanan concerned that the Beis Hamikdash is going to be rebuilt? If you say it will be rebuilt on the 16th, then 16th in the morning, the Beis Hamikdash wasn't yet rebuilt. So that morning, there was no Beis Hamikdash yet. So sunrise, when the sun rose in the east of the 16th in the morning, they became mutter to eat the grain. They didn't know that afternoon the Beis Hamikdash was going to be rebuilt. Elamai must mean that the Beis Hamikdash is being rebuilt on the 15th, on the first day of Pesach. In which case, everybody's going to know that the new grain does not become permitted with daybreak, but requires the Omer. There's enough time to send out the new halachas of the Beis Hamikdash. So at least let it be permitted from this midday onwards, because when the Beis Hamikdash stands, the Omer is going to be brought no later than midday, because the Tamid Shalbeno Abayim, the Tamid of the afternoon, is always brought by 6.5 hours. So the whole Abayim is from the morning until 6.5 hours. So only half a day should be answered. Because we learned how Rechoikim, in the time when the Beis Hamikdash stood, and those who lived far from Jerusalem and weren't sure when the Omer exactly was going to be brought in the Beis Hamikdash, they were allowed to eat from the new grains from midday onwards. The Beis Bezdin Mitzatzlan, because they knew that Bezdin does not tarry. This is not tardy. In other words, they're going to bring the Omer. So why did he prohibit it the whole day? Prohibited it only to the halfway point. But by the afternoon, you should be allowed to eat the new grains. The problem was that maybe the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built right before sundown on the 15th, and there won't be enough time to tell everybody, we now have a Beis Hamikdash. You can't rely on the sunrise. We have to wait for the Omer. Or it'll be built on the 16th by night. Either way, and the entire Omer process might get delayed, or people won't find out that the Beis Hamikdash is established, and it could cause a problem. Therefore, along came Rabbi Yochanan and said, you know what? I'm not allowing you to eat the new grains at all on the 16th. You can only eat them starting the 17th. And for those today who are makbid on eating only Chodosh and Yoshan, they wait to eat Chodosh only after the 16th day, the second day of Pesach, passes in its entirety. In fact, we all do that today because Pesach is Pesach. They don't start baking with the new grains until after Pesach. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and now we're on Amud Beis, heading to the Mishnah where we're going to stop. Keshitis Rabbi Yehuda Amra, we're on 30b1. Keshitis Rabbi Yehuda Amra. He's saying according to the ruling of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, be'emes, lived many generations before Rabbi Yehuda. It means only that they have the similar way of thinking. The Amad said that when the Torah says you should not eat from the new grain, ad etzem ayoim hazeh, until the etzem of this day, the specifics of this very day, ad atzmai shel yoim, until the entirety of the day. In other words, the whole day you shall not eat from the new grains until the whole day of the 16th passes. Kisava, because Rabbi Yehuda holds, ad, the word until, means ba'ad bichlal, until and including. In other words, until the 16th and including the 16th of Nisan in the prohibition of eating from the new grains. So saying to Gemara, me sabala kavasim, does Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai really hold like Rabbi Yehuda, but plug in the miflik polik, and in fact, although he actually argues that because we learned Mishachar Beis Hamikdash, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai shuch henef kulei also. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said that the entire day of the 16th of Nisan is also for the new grains. Over Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda said Rabbi Yehuda, but surely it's biblically forbidden to eat the new grains the entire day of the 16th, when the Beis Hamikdash is not standing. Because etzem day, which is the entire day, only when the Beis Hamikdash is standing and you bring the oimer could you bring it. Otherwise, you have to wait the whole day. So how could Rabbi Yehuda says it's biblical? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is actually saying it's only rabbinical because he instituted this, which means that without his institution, daybreak, you were allowed to go ahead and eat from the new grains when the Beis Hamikdash is not standing. It says the Gemara, no. Awesome, Rabbi Yehuda the Kotoi. There, Rabbi Yehuda is the one that made a mistake. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai kama. He thought that Rabbi Yochanan was saying that in the absence of the Beis Hamikdash, the day of waving, the day of the Omer, is forbidden rabbinically to eat from the new grains, belohi. But in truth, it's not so that even according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, midiaraisakal. He's saying that even biblically speaking, it's forbidden to eat from the new grains the entire day. When the Beis Hamikdash is not standing, you have to wait until the 17th to eat from the new grains. But separate the Gemara about Hiskin Kadani. But it says Rabbi Yochanan instituted, which means that it's only rabbinical in nature. Says the Gemara, by Hiskin, what does it mean instituted? Dorash Hiskin, that he expanded on this pasuk, on the pasuk that says ad etzem hayoim hazeh, until this very day, and explained it that it means that in fact the entire day is prohibited to eat the new grains unless the Beis Hamikdash is standing and I bring the carbon oimer. But if I don't bring the carbon oimer, clearly the whole day remains asur. Very good. We made it to the Mishnah.